Presiding Officer, I am very pleased that we are at long last legislating to overturn the convictions of those wrongly convicted in the Post Office Horizon scandal. And many months ago, as we've heard, I was contacted by Rab Thompson, a constituent of mine, former sub-postmaster of Cambus Post Office, one of around 100 Scots who were wrongly convicted because of this scandal. And even a year ago, when the faults with the Horizon system were already widely known, Rab was struggling to get his conviction overturned. And just on the issue that's now been raised, the politicisation of this about where responsibility lies, it should be said, of course, that this whole scenario started in Westminster. Concerns were first raised about the system in 1997 to the new government at that point, and it centres on a body whose responsibility is entirely reserved to the UK government. We perhaps should remember that, because some people seem to be wanting to elide that point. From the point I met with Rab, my constituency team and I did what we could to support him, countless letters to relevant organisations, being vocal in the press, raising parliamentary questions on the issue. And indeed, I met Rab not long before his hearing, and I'm very pleased to report that he was amongst the first wrongly convicted postmasters in Scotland to get his conviction overturned in January of this year. As I said, Presiding Officer, the postmasters have known about this scandal for decades. The public have known about the scandal for years. I think Polly McNeill used the phrase, the dogs in the street knew about the scandal. So we have to ask ourselves, how did it go on for so long? We now know that a number of people in positions of power knew about this, and had they done things differently, we would not be in this situation today. As the Lord Advocate said, and I do not want to attack the Lord Advocate, I'm sorry, I don't really have much time. I've been told we're not getting the time back for interventions. Apologies for that, Mr Mara. The Post Office, the direct quote from the Lord Advocate to Parliament, the Post Office, its lawyers and UK Government ministers continued to support the Horizon system during 2013 to 2015, by which time we knew of the issues with the Horizon software, and that throughout the scandal there were worrying levels of deliberate and sustained concealment and deception. And it would be good to hear a general principle being put forward to say that any deception should be the subject of criminal investigation and, if necessary, criminal action, not just those against whom we've got disagreements. So the point I want to make today is the same point I made last week. Given those levels of deliberate concealment and deception, what is it going to take for the people responsible for the scandal in the first place, both in the UK Government and in the Post Office, to face the consequences of their actions? The Post Office is answerable to UK ministers, and they are responsible for not taking action when the faults in the Horizon system were first identified. The UK Government in all this has been posted missing as far as sub-postmasters in Scotland are concerned. And I believe it is the UK Government's problem to fix. It would be a rare occasion I would stand here and say, why does the UK not legislate in Scottish affairs? But on this occasion, given the necessity of speed, and we heard from Beatrice Wishart the necessity to mirror as closely as possible the UK legislation, why do we not ensure there is parity of treatment for everyone across the UK affected by this? Why does the UK Government not include Scotland? Why do they include Northern Ireland, which is a different legal system, but they don't include Scotland? A very pertinent question. And I agree with Polly McNeill that we should make sure that the Crown Office and others are held accountable. I am perfectly willing to accept that fact, but not that it should be something that delays the need for justice for the victims in all this. We know the UK Government has broken the Sewell Convention 11 times since 2018, ignoring or overriding the wishes of this Parliament. And to me that begs the question, if Scotland had done it first, would the UK have shut it down and told us to wait for the UK-wide legislation, as they have done in a number of other areas, like the deposit return scheme, which was shut down in order for a UK-wide scheme to take place, which, unsurprisingly, is yet to materialise? I, for one, cannot make sense of the UK Government's decision-making in all of this. I am glad that we are taking action to overturn the wrongful convictions here today. Now, I could be wrong and I am willing to be corrected, but I am sure the Lord Advocate did not say, as has been alleged, that she does not support the idea of generalised pardons, or whatever the relevant technology is. I am sure she said that she could not do it within her powers, and she was not willing to make comment on the collective responsibility position of the Scottish Government. But she said she couldn't do it, not that she wouldn't do it. But what is it going to take for the UK Government and the Post Office to be held to account here? Why did the UK Government, so keen to interfere in Scottish affairs, not include Scotland in this system? And I can't help but conclude that it's because the UK Government would rather play politics, as we're seeing from Murdo Fraser today, with the lives of people they've already let down severely in a cynical attempt to show this Parliament up and avert the blame for themselves. And the disgraceful way they talk about the Lord Advocate just shows as a generalised attempt to discredit institutions in Scotland, part of a wider Tory platform. I think it's a disgrace. And in light of the UK Government's failure to act on behalf of the Scottish victims of this appalling scandal, I support the principles of the proportionate legislation which is now being proposed. I think it's also true to say that we should bear in mind the people that are victims of this. They're not unaware of where responsibility lies here and who's trying to get out from underneath it, who's not willing to take the action that's necessary. There is no logical conclusion other than the plain politics for the UK Government's actions in all of this. So I'm very pleased that the Scottish Government will take action. It's long overdue. People like Rab, my constituent, of course, have had their conviction overturned already, so I assume from what's been said in the debate he will now be eligible for that compensation. But it would be good to see that formalised for the other victims. And I think, and I don't know as much about Maggie Chapman's proposed further amendments, but they sound sensible to me. I hope they be given serious consideration by the Cabinet Secretary and the Government. But let's see if we can get this done as quickly as possible, given the UK Government's failure to act on behalf of the victims of this scandal.
Thank you, Mr.